Jim, thanks for sharing about the financial position area. That's usually the most critical for the caregiver and the family, because we are talking about budgeting and the cash flow and the emergencies of what comes up when there's a lack of cash flow. Could you elaborate on the other areas of financial planning? We know there's 6 altogether. So could you talk a little bit about each one of them?
You bet, absolutely. One of the first ones that comes to mind for me right now, and it's very timely, is tax, given that it's mid-April. But in any case, under your tax planning, what we're looking to do is to try to figure out ways to reduce your taxes so that you can then free up those dollars to spend on the things that you want to spend them on. My preference would be to put toward goal funding, toward your financial independence goal, or build up your cash reserve, or save for that next vehicle purchase that you need, and so on. Which, by the way, now that I mentioned vehicles, it's a general rule of thumb that you should buy a vehicle with cash. Most people don't do that. Of course, these days, if you get 0% financing, I far prefer that. But buy a depreciating asset, in essence, with cash, and buy an appreciating asset with leverage, i.e. your home. So although we've come through some economic cycles here that where home ownership, home valuations have devalued, typically, historically, home values have appreciated, generally with the pace of inflation, so about 3% a year. So with that in mind, buy an appreciating asset with debt, with loans, and buy a depreciating asset with cash. Now there's a lot of philosophies around that too. If I took a Christian perspective to that, I think I'd probably say, you shouldn't be in debt or put your brother in debt to whatever degree that you can. I think the reality of that, though, is that all of us have mortgages, and there's a good way to use leverage, there's a good way to use loans, and there's a bad way to use loans. So that's all part of looking at, and I'm going back into the present financial situation, trying to figure out how we can build your net worth, how we can save you money on current expenses to be able to free up dollars to go toward goal funding or for current needs, whatever that might be. And beyond tax planning, there's retirement planning and investment planning. Retirement planning is a separate goal in and of itself, because it is like the goal. Most people have a retirement goal for themselves, and there's different. My definition of retirement is that point by which you become financially independent, where you do not have to work, and that you could live from your resources, live from your asset base, that kind of thing. It's separated out, separate from other investment goals, because it is so important. The other investment goals would be things like I was mentioning. We'd be talking about vehicle replacement goals, home improvement goals, buying the next home, things like that, second home, if that's an objective for you. And from an investment planning perspective, trying to figure out ways to improve or make your portfolio work as hard as possible for you. I'll give you a great example. In this day and age with low interest rates, most people don't. They're able to, but they don't choose to get a better rate of return on their cash reserve assets. And what I mean by that is that they typically build up their assets in a checking or savings account at their local bank. And there are investments that are paying 50 basis points or half of 1 percentage point to 2 percentage points without a lot of risk, to be able to get a better yield, get a better rate of return on those assets. So to the extent that we can get that better rate of return, now you might think that a half a point or a point or a 1 percentage point won't make much difference. Maybe in 1 year, you're right, but over the course of time, over the course of your investment time horizon, it makes a big difference. 1 percentage point or any smidgen of a percentage point makes a big difference. And so carrying that through, I would say that more often than not, people don't really manage their portfolios well. They don't know, one, how to manage them, and I don't expect them to know how. Somebody like me, who has done it for 27 years, I feel very comfortable with managing portfolios, and I know what an efficient portfolio looks like, and I know what an inefficient portfolio looks like, and there is a difference. Here's another kind of tidbit that I'll share with whoever's watching the video. There are 3 really basic rules, in my opinion, when it comes to investment management that you need to follow. And the first one is have a target asset allocation. If you don't have a guide, if you don't have a plan, then you're just taking a shotgun approach to it, so therefore it's not very efficient. What we really want is a rifle shot approach to the goal, and in this case I'm talking about investment management strategy. Decide on what your risk tolerance is, time frame for the goal or goals, and then that will help determine what your target asset allocation should be. And then once you have that target and you've implemented the portfolio to that target, then rebalance the portfolio periodically to the target. What that does is it forces us to do what we all say we want to do. Everybody tells me that they want to, buy low and sell high. But the reality is their actions speak way more loudly than their words. And they usually wait till the markets go up. Right now the market's at historical highs, as an example. So now people are pouring money into the market. And the market will correct. I can virtually guarantee that. I don't know when, I don't know how to time the market. However, it probably will correct somewhere in the 10-15% range, my guess would be, in the next few months, let's say. And then all of a sudden, what happens? They bought high, market corrects, they make an emotional decision thinking, oh my gosh, that hurt, that didn't feel good, my investment went down in value, I'm going to get out. I can't take that anymore, let's get out of that, it was a bad call. And they take the money out at the bottom, so they've sold low. The best strategy is to buy, hold for the time frame that they need that they have for this goal, but don't just buy and hold and leave it alone. It's invest via your target asset allocation. There was a reason why you came to that target, and rebalance to that target, forcing you to sell high and buy low, which is what everybody wants to do. Why is that? So when the international market's high relative to the target, pull some money out of it, put it into some other position in your portfolio, like let's take U.S. small cap stocks, for example. Let's say they're low today comparatively, or comparative to your target. So therefore you're taking something that did well, it got above the target asset allocation, and you're reallocating it to something that's low relative to your target, forcing you to do what I just said, sell high, buy low. Sell high, buy low. Let's do that. If we do that religiously, you'll actually improve the performance of your portfolio, no doubt. The third one, keep your fees as low as possible. Any reduction in fees will increase the result of your return. Seems obvious, but there's a lot of folks that don't pay attention to that. And oh, by the way, does that suggest that immediately you just go out and buy a cheap ETF, an exchange-traded fund that's investing in an index? Not necessarily. You have to be mindful of what's the result or what's the return of that position net of the fees. And if it's beating their benchmark, then obviously that's a good thing. And we want to consistently find funds, find managers that are doing that in each asset class within your target asset allocation to make the whole portfolio do better than their relative benchmarks, their indices and so on. If we buy just an index fund, then we're just going to get the index return. Yes, it's a cheap way to buy investments, and there are indices that we do that with, and then there are other parts of your portfolio we use fully managed managers for, because they can take advantage of inefficiencies in those various markets. For those of you who think that there's really no place to make any money in the fixed income world these days, there are plenty of places to make money in the fixed income world. We're averaging on different investments anywhere from 1% to 7%. I mean, and those are the dividend yields. So for those of you who are just wondering, hey, what can I do? There are investments that you can invest in. And by having a diverse portfolio, you reduce the risk, you reduce the volatility of that portfolio. And if what I'm saying is just too much, if it's Greek to you and so on, find a coach, find an advisor that you know and trust, and can help you walk through these issues and help you create that strategy, that investment strategy. You're right, Jake, you said there were 6. So there are a couple more. Protection planning is another one. And there what we're trying to figure out is what kind of coverages do you need? Life insurance, health insurance, disability insurance, long-term care insurance, auto insurance, homeowners insurance, all these various insurances. And most people don't like insurance. They think it's a necessary evil and they have to pay these premiums and wish they didn't have to do so. At the end of the day, We need to calculate or figure out what's your exposure, and then how do we fund that the most efficient way possible? By shopping the national market, we can reduce expenses. You can reduce expenses. I suggest to all of my clients we should be doing that on a probably every other year basis at the very least, especially when it comes to auto insurance, homeowners insurance. These rates change all the time. You see your rate increases just about every renewal, and it's important to make sure that you're getting the best deal. And the only way you're going to be able to find out if you're getting the best deal is by going out and shopping the market. Maybe you don't want to spend your time doing that, but have somebody or your agent or whoever do that for you. So having the right amounts of coverage, shopping the markets to keep the costs down and not paying too much for it, and that you have the right kinds of coverages. You know, for some people, again, I'll pick on auto insurance. They have a $500 deductible or a $100 deductible, worse yet, from years gone past when they set that up 20 years ago. And today, probably with inflation and so on, I would recommend a higher deductible, maybe a $1,000 deductible, because, you know, again, due to inflation, $500 20 years ago was not $500 a day, as you all know. With inflation, maybe that's $750, or maybe it's as much as $1,000. So let's be mindful of what we're paying for, what we're passing on to the risk that we're passing on to the insurance carriers, and whether or not we want to continue to pass that risk on. Different phases of your life, you need different kinds of coverages and different levels of coverages. So that's another piece. And so there's a number of issues there in protection planning, and a good advisor will help you walk through each of those and make recommendations as to what changes you need to make within your financial life in that regard. And the last one is estate planning, and that is to save. I'll say it this way: preserve your assets for the benefit of your families. And there's a lot of folks who don't realize that by not having a will, that the state that you live in does have a will pre-drafted for you. And frankly, I think if you thought about it, do I really want the state to decide where my assets go and who manages my affairs, or do I want to decide that? I think all of us would choose the control. They would choose that they would be in control of those decisions. And that's why a will is required, and possibly a trust, whether it's a separate trust or trust set up inside the will. So there's a number of issues there too that need to be thought through, and just play out the scenario of death and what's going to happen financially and logistically. And then by doing that exercise, then you'll know that you've got things covered. And I'll go back to something I said before. By going through these issues with folks, what happens is I see the stress level go down. I see that, okay, this is what's going to happen if and when I die. This is going to happen if and when I become disabled. This is what's going to happen if the kids move off to college, and now we're empty nesters and so on. So we can play out those scenarios, just talking through the logistics and what's going to happen, and dreaming about what that could look like is important, and it helps you get some clarity of what your life plan is, and we can put in place strategies to help make that a reality. So stress is a big health issue, and as we all know, and one way to relieve that stress is to have a plan and to work that plan and to continually monitor and update that plan. It's not a one and done kind of thing.